Okay, so we just introduced this idea of the 100% being on the selling price. So let's now go through and do some sample problems where the 100% is on the selling price. So let's say I give you that the selling price is $180. The markup is 20% markup on the selling price. I want you to find the cost. So again, this table still stays the same. Cost plus markup equals selling price. So there's absolutely nothing different here. Still percents here and dollars there. What we know. 180 goes where? Dollar side and selling price. 20 goes percent side and markup. Our lurking 100 on the selling price. So what goes for the cost here on the percent side? 80, good. 100 minus 20 makes 80. Because those two, the cost and the markup must add up to the selling price. So 80 plus 20 equals 100. We are looking for the dollar amount of the cost. So 80 times 180 divided by 100 is going to be 144 is the cost.
Is it always going to be added on top?
Yes, it's always going to be this one plus this one has to equal this one on both sides.
Never subtract from this.
Never subtract. As you move down, you're always going to add. Because a markup is a percent increase. If I give you that the dollar markup is $28, and the percent markup on selling price is 56%. Find the cost. I'm going to turn you guys loose for a minute and see what you guys can do with that one. So we got our standard table. $28 goes on the dollar side of the markup. 56 goes on the percent side of the markup. And 100 goes on the selling price, which makes this number here 44. We're looking for the cost, which is right here. So we find it by doing, of course, we don't need the bottom row this time. So we're going to find that dollar cost by doing 44 times 28 divided by 56 is $22. Not so bad?
Nope.
Good.
Better. It's that damn deadline table that we don't have to use. Sorry.
So, okay. Let's say we have an item that costs $350. There's a 30% markup on selling price. Find the selling price. I'm going to go through this slowly as I write it down to give you a chance to try to get ahead of me. So we have the $350 goes on the cost. 30 goes on the percent side of the markup. And 100 goes the selling price. This is 70. We're looking for dollar selling price. So we are going to eliminate the middle row here this time. 100 times 350 divided by 70 is a $500 cost. Any questions on that one? How many of you had it right? Good deal. So if our dollar markup is $120, there's a 20% markup on selling price. Find the selling price. Once again, I'm going to write it down slowly to give you a chance to try to get ahead of me. So markup is $120 on the dollar side and 20 on the percent side. What else do we have? 100 on the selling price side, and of course The percent on the cost side is 80. The cost on the percent side is 80. We are looking for that price. You got it. We're looking for the selling price. So we don't need the top row. 100 times 120 divided by 20 is a $600 selling price. So let's say our cost is $220. Our selling price is $400. Find the percent markup on cost. So again, I'll write slow.
Cost of the cost.
So 320 goes on the dollar side of the cost. 400 goes on the dollar side of the selling price. 100 goes on the cost. Hey, you guys caught that. I was trying to be sneaky there. So what else can we find here really quickly? The dollar amount of the markup. There it is. Excuse me. Is $80. That's just the difference between the 320 and the 400. We are asked to find the percent markup on the cost. The on the cost is why we knew the 100 had to go on the cost. So this time we don't need the bottom row. Cross, multiply, and divide. 100 times 80 divided by 320 is 25. That's a 25% markup on cost. Oh, I didn't fool you on that one. That's good. It's really good. So if the cost is $320 and the selling price is $400, find the percent markup on selling price. So the 320 goes in the dollar side of the cost. 400 goes in the dollar side of the selling price. 100 goes percent side of the selling price. Good. And we once again can find the dollar markup as 80 because it's the same as above. Just the difference between the 320 and the 400. And we are once again looking at the percent markup is what we're trying to find. This time it's the top row we don't need. 100 times 80 divided by 400 is 20. That is a 20% markup on selling price. Now this is something to note. These two were the same problem. Just one was looking for the markup on the cost. The other one was the markup on the selling price. It's very common in retailing to have a single item, same cost, same selling price, but the markup is figured both ways. And we'll talk about why that would be necessary here in a little bit. But notice the markup on the selling price will always be lower than the markup on the cost, because the selling price should always be bigger than the cost in 90% if you're making a profit. There are clearance and stuff like that, and we'll look at, after a while, we'll look at how they handle those clearance prices and stuff in a little bit. It's an extra complication in the formula. But for the most part, the markup on selling price is always going to be smaller than the markup on cost for the same item. So let's say our cost is $340. And this is a 15% markup on selling price. Find dollar amount of the markup. So we have the $340 goes in the dollar amount of the cost. 15% is the markup. That goes on the percent side of the markup. What else do we have? Okay, yeah, 100 goes to the selling price. So yeah, the 85 would be on the cost. Yes. You're half a step ahead of us there. So yes, we can find that 85% for the cost by working backwards. So then, what are we looking for? The dollar amount of the markup. So we don't need the bottom row. 15 times 340 divided by 85. Maybe $60 is the dollar amount of the markup. Why would we ever want to have the same item given with a percent markup on cost and a percent markup on selling price? Well, most of you can probably see the advantages. Wow, I cannot spell. Advantages of the percent markup on cost. I mean, the merchandise comes in, you find the percent, calculate the percent of the cost and add it on, and it's there. It's easy to do. easy to find the selling price. I mean, the percent markup on cost just makes sense. Whatever it costs you for the item, you find a percent of it and you add it on. It seems like the logical way of doing it. Percent markup on selling price does not seem as logical, but it's actually more useful in a lot of ways. One way it's more useful is for financial reports. By that I mean generally your overhead that we talked about. It's usually easier to figure out your overhead and all those other expenses as a percent of your total sales. Your rent is this percent of our total sales. Our utilities is this percent of our total sales. Unassignable labor cost was this percent of our total sales, and so on. The other reason is the total is readily available. What do I mean by that? Well, if you want to know your total selling price is just equal to your sales, your gross sales. So you just go to your cash register and pull a report off the cash register. There it is. You have the total selling price. So at the end of the month, it's really easy to figure out what is your total markup if you have that total sales. So like I said, even though the markup on cost makes more sense, it's easier to understand, markup on selling price is actually more useful. The place where the markup on cost makes the most sense, of course, is when you bring that item in, you know what it costs, you find the markup and you set the price. For setting the price on the items, that markup on cost is easier to use. So a lot of retailers have both numbers available to use. And there is equivalency and a conversion. If I want to convert, let's say we have a 25% markup on cost to a percent markup on selling price. Guess what we're going to use? There you go. Cost plus markup still equals the selling price. Now notice I have not labeled any of the columns up on top yet because these are going to be slightly different. Notice I just label them from and to. I am going from percent on cost to percent on selling price. We don't have any dollar amounts here. We're working strictly with percents. So both sides of this are percents. Just one side is the percent based on cost, and the other side is the percent based on selling price. Now, before I even look at the percent that's given in the problem, there are two numbers I can fill in this table. If the percent is based on cost, the 100 goes with the cost. If the percent is based on the selling price, the 100 goes on the selling price. So this section right here that I just created is a standard table And it is standard for converting. In other words, there are no dollar amounts here. And we're just trying to convert 1% markup to another percent markup. So now I look at what I'm given in the problem. 25% markup on cost. So that goes to the cost side, and that is the percent markup. So that goes here. Which means I can fill in this number now. Whenever I have two numbers on the same side, I can find the third one. And this one's going to be what? 125. Good. What I am looking for here is the percent markup on the selling price side. So I don't need this top row. So I'm going to do 25 times 100 divided by 125 is going to be 20. A 25% markup on cost equates to a 20% markup on selling price. So let's look at another example. Convert a 50% markup on selling price to a percent markup on cost. So again, the shell of our table looks exactly the same. Now it is totally up to you whether you always want to do the from on the left side and the to on the right side, or some people prefer to always have the markup on cost on the left side and on selling price on the right side. It really doesn't matter. If I put percent on cost on this side, I'm going to erase the to and from. If I put percent on cost on this side, that means what's going to happen on this side? Well, the 100 is going to go with the cost, right? That means this other side has to be percent on selling price, and the 100 has to go the selling price. Again, notice at this point I have not used a single piece of information from the problem other than the fact that I know that I'm just converting a percent from one to the other, one type to the other. Now I look at the problem, I have the 50%. Where's that going to go? Cost side or selling price side? Selling price side, right there. And now that I know that, I have two numbers on the selling price side, I can find the third one. What's this one going to be? 50. Because 50 plus 50 equals 100. And I am looking for the markup on the cost side. So, I don't need the bottom line. I will cross multiply and divide. 100 times 50 divided by 50. That's 100. This is a 100% markup on cost. A slight difference I should point out here, by the way. Markup, percent markup on selling price will always be less than 100%. Because if the percent markup on selling price were 100%, what does that mean? It means you got it for free. Because if the markup is 100%, selling price is 100%, the cost has to be 0%. So the only way you can ever have a 100% markup on selling price is if you got something for free. Percent markup on cost has no limit. You can double the cost, you can triple the cost, you can do 20 times the cost. You have a 2,000% markup on the cost. You might not sell much, but mathematically there is no limit on it. I'm going to have you guys try one of these conversions quick. Convert a 40% markup on cost to a percent markup on selling price. So, on the left side, what did you put as percent on cost? Okay. So that means 100 goes on the cost. On the left side, it has to be percent on selling price then. 100 has to go the selling price. So now, what do we do? 40 on the cost side of the markup. And that means this number is going to be 140. Always adding, going down. We are looking for this number over here. So I can ignore the top row. 40 times 100 divided by 140. Let's see, 4,000 divided by 140 is at 28.571429 about percent.
Yep.
Okay. So about 28.57%. Any questions? This is a little bit easier than last week, right?
No, it's worse.
It's worse. Yeah.
How much is that in fun?
Good. Markdowns. I'm sensing a slight insincerity there. Markdowns. There are several reasons to have a markdown. Out of season, if it's like clothing or other items that follow fashion trends or whatever. Out of style, out of season, whatever. Like the best time to buy a winter coat, if you can find one, is in late March or early April. Or the worst time to buy a winter coat could be if there's a really late snowstorm with a heavy cold blast in late March. If you need to find one quick, they're going to be off the shelf. Swimsuits are out now, yeah. That's the problem, is if you can find them, that's the cheapest time to buy them. Or there might be near a spoilage date. This would be obviously mostly for food items. There are other items that have expiration dates or sell-by dates. Or discontinued. Now, discontinued mean the manufacturer just plain isn't going to make them anymore, or it could just mean that store decides they're not going to carry them anymore and they want to get them out. So if the original price is $60, there's going to be a 40% markdown. What's that new price going to be? Well, the easiest way to do this is to do like we did with our invoicing when there was a discount on the payment. So we got our $60. We're going to multiply by the complement of the discount. So 100% minus 40% makes 60%, or yes, 0.6. So $60 times 0.6 or 60% is $36 is the new price. The only time that markdowns become tricky at all, well, there's a couple of cases, I should say. Let's say that after a 25% markdown, the new price is $22.50. The old price had to be what? So if when we had the markdown, we took the old price times the complement of the discount. So this is going to be our old price here times what? 100 minus 25% is going to give us 0.75, 75%. And that's going to equal the $22.50. Well, how do I get back from here back to there? You got it. We're going to take the $22.50 divided by the 0.75. $30 is the original price. What do you think? I'm going to muddy the waters here just a touch. I'm not trying to hurt you yet. But let's say we've got a winter coat. Its original price is $120. In March, because winter's pretty much over, put it on a 40% markdown. Late March, so a few weeks later, huge snowstorm, massive cold spell, hanging on for several weeks. A lot of people need winter coats that thought they were going to make it through. Law of supply and demand says demand goes up, price goes up. So a 45% markup. April, well, cold snap has gone by. $50 markdown. Now, not a lot of stores will let this happen anymore. A lot of stores cycle them out and actually send them back or have alternative ways of disposing of them. But they won't let it sit out a season like this. But let's say that stays there until August. Like I said, most stores come June would have some sort of alternative way of disposing of them. They'd have a secondary market they get rid of them on. But let's say August comes around and the new styles are coming out. So not only is this out of season, but the new style for the next winter is coming out. Looks nothing like this. This one's now considered ugly. So another 30% markdown. After all this, find the final price. Now this looks relatively ugly, but it's not. We start out with that $120 original price. 40% markdown would be 100 minus 40%, which is 60%, right? Or 0.6. A 60% mark, or sorry, 45% markup is going to be 100, not minus 45, but plus 45. So that's going to be 1.45, 145%. $50 markdown. 100 minus 50, or 50%, so 0.5. 30% markdown. 100 minus 30, which is 70, so 0.7. So all we have to do to find that final price is just multiply across there. 120 times 0.6 times 1.45 times 0.5 times 0.7. $36.54 would be the final price after all that action. I'm going to have you guys do an example of this quick. I'm going to spare you the story and just write it down quickly. So let's say the original price is $80. Sorry to disappoint. There's a markdown of 25%. An additional markdown of 30%, a markup of 40%, and a final, so I'm going to put a plus on the front of that, a final markdown of 50%. So in your notes, find the final price. So $80 times 0.75 times 0.70 times, careful, that's 1.40 because that's the markup. I knew I'd catch a few people on that one. And then the times 0.5 or 0.50. So 80 times 0.75 times 0.7 times 1.4 times 0.5. $29.40. How many of you had that? Cool. Well, that would be a good spot to take a break then. It's 7:20. Let's come back at 7:30.